Schedule a free design consultation, and the more you buy, the more you'll save on blinds, shades, shutters, and more from Budget Blinds. Visit budgetblinds.com today.
This is Newcap News with Bart Pediasic.
Good evening. The National Chief for the Assembly of First Nations is calling for a full investigation into a fatal house fire on Makwesagegin First Nation that claimed the lives of 2 young children.
Find out exactly what happened and then an immediate action plan to make sure it doesn't happen again.
2-year-old Harley Chinanao and his 18-month-old sister Haley died in the fire on the reservation Tuesday, but there was no response when flames broke out. The reserve relied on volunteer firefighters from Loon Lake, who say service was cut off over an unpaid bill for $3,300. The federal government was criticized for not providing enough funding to First Nation fire protection, but Ottawa says it allotted $34,000 to run a fire hall on a reserve, and that was converted into a youth center. As well, we're learning more about threatening social media posts that were directed towards the Loon Lake Fire Chief and Mayor Larry Heon. Yesterday, police say the threats came as a result of the Loon Lake Fire Department's non-attendance to Tuesday's fatal house fire. 27-year-old Mitsuing is being charged with uttering threats and has been released on conditions not to contact Heon. He's to appear in Loon Lake Provincial Court next month. Some Lakeland residents are heated that there's only one main polling station to nominate the next PC representative for the Bonnyville-Cold Lake constituency. The local nomination committee arranged for one poll in Cold Lake this Saturday, leaving residents in Glendon and Bonnyville to travel 30 to 50 kilometers to vote.
The polling day should be quite easily accessible to all the members of the riding.
The candidates are current Mayor of Cold Lake, Craig Copeland, and Dixie Dahlstead, who resides in Glendon. After concerns around the community and many members being seniors who may not be able to make the trip, PC Alberta set up an advanced polling station in Bonnyville.
I don't think so, but it doesn't, you know, if you do the bare minimum to make it acceptable, that doesn't mean it's the best thing for the people.
Rondeau says he doesn't believe that there was an honest effort to find resources, as historically they've had at least 3 polling stations. In the end, it's a matter of fair access to everyone.
You can't do that by putting a poll, one poll in the whole riding at an extreme end of it and say, well, everybody else, there was no place. You know, it just doesn't fly.
Even though it's too late to gain any more stations, Rondeau hopes people still exercise their right to vote. The 39th annual Telemiracle fundraiser will take place on March 7th and 8th this year. And while organizers are busy preparing for the telethon, so too are some local businesses in an effort to raise funds for the big event.
It's just growing and growing, and it's going to get bigger and bigger.
The SGI Claim Center hosts a small fundraiser every year to raise donations. With a number of employees closely tied to the foundation, it's the personal stories which motivate them to donate year after year.
I went to the fundraiser that the Kingsmen and Canettes put on last year and heard a very touching story about a little kid that had went through a lot and how Telemiracle helped them. And it was good to hear, and so it made it a little more personal to actually physically see someone and what they'd went through.
A friend of mine was injured in a harvesting accident, and they helped him to get some equipment so that he would be able to use his tractor because he had lost both of his arms.
The 39th edition of the telethon goes March 7th and 8th and will be broadcasted live on CTV. 1 in 4 adult Canadians are clinically overweight, at least according to the Canadian Obesity Network. Eating healthy is one way to curb the issue, and a chef in the border cities offering classes on healthy cooking alternatives, helping to keep calories low. Annika Notfade has more in this week's Healthy Living.
It's healthy for you.
My husband and I are trying to get on a little bit more of a health kick, and this is one of the areas where I know we really lack.
Josie Brewster admits learning how to cook healthy from scratch is daunting, so why not take a class on it?
All the recipes so easy to make it. You just look at once and it will be, there are only 4 or 5 items in each recipe, so it's very, very simple and very healthy.
He says eating healthy starts at your own house, then you know exactly what you're eating.
Home cooking for me is very important because you control what you eat. and what you put in your mouth. If you have kids, it's a good start, to do that home with the kids together, so they can learn, how to have, a better way of life, because our food makes us sick. What I'm going to tell you, what type of proteins to use more often.
And this class is all about those alternatives. He says it's okay to eat meat, but you don't need it all the time, and to try other options.
And everything that we use in the soup is all available at the stores, and vegetables. You don't use anything that is fat there. Look at all the nutrition we have here.
So good.
And look at what we have there. It's so healthy, everything there. Fish is very good for you, for all the omegas.
You hear about some of these superfoods. How do you use them? How do you cook them? That type of thing.
For details on more cooking classes, visit the Harvest to Home Facebook page. Anna Knopfate, Newcap News.
The AgriVision's final day started off with a presentation about how the food production industry can respond to consumer demand and interest concerning what's in our food. But because of ever-changing trends and contradicting information, it's not as easy as a course for the industry to navigate. Graham McCann has more in this week's Ag Report.
It's not really true that the customer always knows best, but it's best that companies listen to consumers if they intend to stay in business. David McInnes from the Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute gave a presentation at AgriVisions about the concerns consumers have regarding what is in our food and how the food industry must navigate through trends in order to satisfy the wants of the consumer and stay competitive.
Consumers are increasingly interested in what they eat, where food is coming from, how it's produced. And we're seeing that in terms of the demand for gluten-free products.
The recent trend of being gluten-free is a good example of the kind of consumer demand that producers have to acknowledge and traverse. Celiac disease affects, at most, around 1% of Canadians. Despite this, McInnes says that around 30% of people choose gluten-free products because they feel that it contributes to their wellness.
A lot of consumers will choose foods because it makes them feel better, or they feel it's part of their lifestyle. And so there's a lot of trends out there. That can be frustrating at times, because how do we know how to market and develop new food products when a trend can come and go?
That's a big challenge to the food marketplace. Nutritional health is not a one-fits-all idea, nor is it fully understood yet. It's an extremely difficult area in scientific research, and the crowded space of opinions and misinformation adds to the frustration.
So there has to be a pursuit of good information. There has to be a good sharing of information. But for the agri-food sector, simply saying we need to better educate the consumer seems a little bit of a one-way streak. But the bottom line here is, how can we be more responsive, because retailers, stores, restaurants, they're all catering to a consumer who wants to eat differently and better.
Graham McCann, Newcap News.